Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I am John, and it is time for another Motorweek Retro Review reaction. And this week it is the 1992 Buick Skylark Grand Sport. Now, this is probably the first one of these that I'm going to be uploading in 2023, so if you are just coming back here, Happy New Year. If I upload this earlier, well then just forget I said anything. This one is particular importance to me. Now, I tend to schedule these in advance of what day I'm going to actually do them, as well as looking ahead at what ones I want to actually do. But this one just popped up, and here's the deal, guys. I always view this as you and me sitting around reminiscing, our favorite beverage in hand, maybe by a crackling fire if it's the winter time, just reminiscing about cars. And I don't want you to hate me, but I loved the Buick Skylark when it came out. Yes, I know, but let me paint the picture here. I had my first car was a Buick. At this point, I had my second Buick Regal, and I was working my way through college. So I'd work a semester, go back to school. I was paying for all of my own college, but I had a very high opinion of Buick at the time, and my opinion of General Motors and Buick overall had not dropped. And so when Buick came out with a small, affordable car, I was super excited, and I'm embarrassed to tell you how close I actually came to trying to get one. I'm glad I didn't, not only because of the car, but because it would have really put me under a tremendous amount of financial stress trying to keep those payments up. But it's going to be fun because I haven't looked at one of these since they were brand new, about 1992, maybe 1993 is when I drove it. It'll be fun to see if these are remotely as enjoyable as I remember them being. I don't expect so, but let's get into it.
Possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com.
Believe it or not, this is a Buick Skylark to be exact. It sits on General Motors' new in-car platform. This redesigned Skylark has been provided a controversial shape unlike anything else on the road, and very avant-garde for Buick. However, the radical restyling of the Skylark was not a complete surprise.
So before they jump into it, let's just talk about the styling real quick. It didn't age well, and I think that there were people, certainly when it was new, that didn't like it. Personally, even today, I think the Alero looks better, but the headlights are a little too big. What were they thinking with the nose? Honestly, that little point, I think they were hearkening back to earlier Buicks. This is one of those where the rear wheel well isn't really a circle. It kind of cuts across it right there. There's a lot of weird, like they said, avant-garde styling, while also hearkening back to this is your father's Oldsmobile, right? Of old person styling, and I don't know. Looking back, it just doesn't work, but at least they were trying to do something that wasn't generic. I don't know. Grand Am looked better.
Though brand new, the latest Buick Skylark boasts an interesting background. The body is a close copy of Buick's Bolero show car, which...
Whoa. How do they think that is a close copy of that? That looks more like a Lucerne, honestly, but sexier. The little Roadmaster there in the front wheel arch, nose is a little too pointed. I'm getting some, I don't know, LHS vibes from that. Ooh, I don't know where they're going with that one.
Appeared on the auto show circuit 2 years ago. The Skylark is the second recent Buick model to take this route to production. The first was the Park Avenue, which was based on Buick's Essence show car,
which I have spoken very highly about. That is an unbelievably quiet, good driving, and reliable, well-built car. Love the Park Avenue. Wish I had one.
The Skylark's production shape does break away from recent Buick styling. The most striking feature of the new N-platform-based Skylark is its distinctive grille, guaranteed to catch your attention the moment that it appears from around a corner. The unusual front fascia is somewhat reminiscent of Buicks of the 30s and 40s. Powerful, yet here may be too much so, as is the heavy lower body cladding. The The profile, however, shows a modern wedge shape that Buick hopes will appeal to a younger audience.
Let's talk about the styling a little bit more there. I'm going to try to go back just a little bit and get that profile. You know, the problem is this car, if we're being very, very fair, this car was almost a little bit ahead of its time in terms of styling, okay? Not the mechanics necessarily. They were doing something interesting with the grille, and other cars have done it, but I want you to take this car and move it forward 20 years, right? Take those lights, narrow them up, make them halogen or LED, and then take that grille, that avant-garde pointy grille, and expand it down below that front bumper line. Make it bigger. Do away with some of this body cladding. And all of a sudden, you have where styling went to. It's like a primitive version of, I think, where some car styling tried to go to. It ends up looking really generic while looking weird at the same time, but I can see some forward thinking here in emphasizing the grille like that. When you look at Lexus and BMW and Genesis and everything with these huge grills, GM was focusing on the front and doing something interesting with the grille. That's what I'm really kind of honing in on here.
Appeal to a younger audience. The sloping roofline and high rear deck are extremes of what we've seen on the Buick Regal in recent years. The result is a look that has our Motorweek staff sharply divided. They either love it or hate it. We think that potential buyers will react in the same way.
You know, that reminds me of a story when Dodge was redesigning their truck back in the day. And they had basically squared off, boring trucks that weren't doing very well against Chevys and Fords. And they came up with one that looked like what they introduced. It looked like a mini Kenilworth. And buyers were sharply divided. Right? They loved it or they hated it, but the ones that loved it would buy it. And so Dodge made the decision to go that route. They increased their sales. They turned off some people, but they increased their sales because at least people were passionate about it. Didn't work that way for Buick here, but at least I respect what they were trying to do. And I got thoughts about the interior, but let's let them talk first.
The interior will also be an emotional shock to longtime Buick fans. It too follows the design of the Bolero show car, with its smooth undulating curves and lines that flow from one side of the cabin to the other. It's all very unique and should appeal to a trendier class of drivers. Analog gauges are favored by drivers of all ages, and the Skylark has them in abundance. Two of the smaller ones are partially hidden by the steering wheel, but all are easy to scan quickly. Our Grand Sport model seats were an eye-catching combination of leather and cloth. Again, not what we're used to seeing on a Buick, but the seats offer plenty of support for the thighs and lower back. Upper back support is somewhat lacking, but we like the overall firm European feel. Controls conveniently surround the driver. The steering wheel stalks are a new design that work with the positive feel of an import. It's easy to reach the panel that controls the Grand Sport standard adjustable suspension. It includes soft, firm, and auto settings. This system is also available on the base Skylark. Heat and ventilation are regulated by a set of large, equally convenient rotary switches. And our test car's optional compact disc stereo is the picture of simplicity. It sounds great, too. We also like...
Let's talk about this interior for a minute, guys. So, first off, I never drove the Grand Sport. Let's be honest here. I was a college student and I was looking at the cheapest one with an automatic. This interior is far more hideous than I remember. I remember it being comfortable. I do not remember red and red on red. What was wrong with them in the early 90s? And I don't remember the dash being that different. Honestly, I remember liking it. I don't remember it being as swoopy as it is, because looking at it now, I don't like it at all. Like they said, the controls were much simplified from earlier GM cars where you had the sliders and you had bi-level and everything else. But when you look at that HVAC, it still had a lot of settings. It didn't have floor dash, whatever. It had everything else. It's still a little complex. The radio, simple, buttons were still a little small, and that swoop around the instrument panel made the vents in the center a little small. It's okay, just a lot of cheap plastic tried to be made interesting with shape. It just doesn't work. The gauges are clear, but overall, this is not a place. When I came out of an 83 Buick, I think it was, with a square binnacle. I want some shape. I want an eyebrow over the instruments, but I want it to look more like, well, honestly, like a Mitsubishi or a Nissan than whatever the heck this is. Interesting choice to do this on their cheapest car. They're swinging for the fences here, but if people are comparing this against some other imports at a lower price point, I don't see how that would appeal to a lot of people. Don't like the interior. Really don't like the interior at all.
I like the fact that the rear windows on the Skylark four-door roll all the way down. Though the in-body platform may be smaller than traditional Buicks, it still allows enough rear seat room for tall adults to ride comfortably for long periods. The split folding seat back is unusual for a Buick and increases the space of the already generous trunk. Trunk liftover is low for easy loading. The Skylark's base engine is the 8-valve version of GM's Quad 4, called Quad OHC. We've spent little time with this rent-a-car engine, but initial drives show it makes noise faster than power. The Grand Sport carries GM's 3300 Series V6 as standard equipment. Its 3.3 liters produce 160 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque. It's connected to a smooth 3-speed automatic transmission, the only gearbox available for the Skylark line.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So first off, you've got the 8-valve version of the Quad 4, where they say it made more noise than power. Probably true. I still like the engine, but it ended up having some head gasket issues along the way. They later made that a better engine, calmed it down, but not a great engine, should not have been released the way it was. The next choice is that 3300 V6, not a great engine. The 3.8 liter was a much better option, or almost anything else in my humble opinion. And then 1992, in what is technically a premium brand, a 3-speed automatic. This is the kind of decision that has led me during the formation of this channel to say that GM couldn't do it all right all at the same time. Here's a new platform. Well, let's stick in an engine that's rough, and here's an old transmission. Everybody else is going to 4-speed. We don't need it. That's the decisions here. Just really, really kind of disappointing. Now, again, if I'm being extremely fair and I go back to 1992, that would not have been a downside. This engine and this transmission would have worked better than my Buick at the time. So probably would not have really cross-shopped that much, because let's also face it, at this time I was anti-import. I had not had the experience of owning an import that just worked well. So just disappointing choices all the way around.
Excellent throttle response and that 160 horsepower means that our prototype test Grand Sport reached 60 in 10 seconds flat. The quarter mile took 17.6 seconds, ending at 80 miles per hour. The 3300 V6 comes on strong from low RPMs and delivers consistent power with minimal vibration throughout the rev range. The 3300 has a smooth character, similar to Buick's more familiar 3800 V6. However, it's not a fast revving engine like the 16-valve Quad 4 motors available on the other end bodies, the Pontiac Grand Am and OLDSMOBILE Achieva. However, we'll gladly trade smoothness for spin-up here. Skylark handling is definitely geared towards the younger drivers. The suspension sport setting produces the strong grip that we associate with some of Pontiac's more trackable products. The softer setting produces a highway ride that's more European firm than luxury soft. There is some tire rumble that we're not used to in Buicks, but the overall ride is very comfortable. Skylark V6 EPA mileage estimates are 20 city, 27 highway. Expect an everyday average of 23 miles per gallon. Our interior sound measurement steadied at a quiet 68 decibels. All Skylarks are equipped with standard anti-lock brakes, part of GM's effort to equip most of its small cars with ABS for 1992. The front disc rear drum combination stops our test car from 60 in a good average distance of 120 feet. There was plenty of nosedive, but stability was excellent.
So that's interesting. I don't remember what year Cavalier I had off the top of my head, but I've mentioned before I had a Cavalier and it had GM's ABS system, and they, to their credit, they designed an ABS system when anti-lock braking at the time was like $1,000 or $1,400 or something like that. They designed an ABS system that was like $400, $500, something like that, that could be applied to all their cars. The problem was that on lighter cars, it would detect lockup on the rear when you weren't actually locking up, like going down a driveway in the rain. It would pump the brakes and you just roll right on. So, you know, good result, 120 feet there. We're going to talk about some other things later, but 120 feet, that's not bad. That's pretty darn good. Good control. ABS is doing its job, but hindsight being what it is, I didn't trust this system at all.
If you like the in-body's performance, but not the Skylark styling, what about those other in-body options? The 92 Pontiac Grand Am has also been heavily redesigned both inside and out, yet still retains a definite Pontiac identity. The Quad 4 OHC joins the standard and high-output Quad 4s in the Grand Am's engine lineup. The 3300 V6 is also there as an option. Performance is what we've come to expect from GM's Sporty Fun division, and the new Grand Am GT delivers the most in-body driving thrills. Want something more stylish, an in-body that looks like a sleek import? Then you should check out the OLDSMOBILE Achieva when it debuts later this winter. While offering a less controversial look, the Achieva still offers its share of practicality and driving enjoyment. The highlight of the Achieva line is the Achieva SC, a sporty coupe which proves that Buick isn't the only GM division with adventurous stylists. But if you simply must have a Buick Skylark, then expect to pay at least $13,560. Our Grand Sport test car starts at $15,555. In our safety check, the Buick Skylark passes with standard anti-lock brakes and rear shoulder belts, but it offers no airbags. The Skylark is a brave attempt at creating a new Buick for a new Buick buyer. While the execution is not quite up to big Buick standards, it shows much promise, both for Buick and for GM's new in-body platform. It now remains to be seen whether the car-buying public will embrace the Skylark's radical styling and unusual interior design. But even if they don't, the Skylark at least puts any ideas about Buick being an old man's car division to rest for good.
Well, that was an optimistic way to put it. It absolutely did not. And you know what I find myself thinking here while I'm watching this is 30 years ago, and it's the same kind of problems that GM is having with Buick still today. I question this car very strongly, as a matter of fact. So the answer of, is it as amazing as I remember? The answer is absolutely not. I don't know why I loved it. Now, I really, really like the Oldsmobile as well. I had a chance to drive one of those when they first came out, first got on dealers' lots. I remember a huge brochure I got from GM about it. Really good car, really liked that car. But the Buick, I find to be a contradiction. That if you've got a buyer base of older people who want quiet, refined, smooth riding, and you want to move to the smaller car market, how do you capture new buyers? And that's where Mercedes and BMW and Acura, and of course around this time you had Infiniti and Lexus moving in there too. I don't think this is the way to do it. They were at least being adventurous and saying, well, we need better styling. And during this review, they said a couple times, this is going to appeal to a more youthful buyer. But then they didn't put in engines that would appeal to a youthful buyer. If I'm a youngster, right, upwardly mobile professional and I want an interesting, small, premium level car, why the heck would I buy this over, say, an Acura or an Audi? The styling is at least interesting, let's agree on that, but it harkens back to an older age. And you've got that little skirt over that rear window. You get that heavy body cladding. Then when you go inside, you get these weird shapes. But then if you're youthful, you want a presence and you probably want a little bit of sporty handling, right? That's kind of where Acura built their reputation. It's not more luxury, so maybe you want a little more sport, but then they put in slower revving engines that really didn't perform that well. Well, that's more appealing to the older buyer. If you think about me, if I drove a Grand Am or a Buick, I'd probably pick the Buick because I want a sedate driving experience that's quiet and refined, purposeful, but I don't need a high revving engine. So who is this car actually for? And I think this is a really good example of the dysfunction in General Motors at the time, that they tried to do something adventurous that still wouldn't appeal to their actual target market. I'm curious what the sales were on this because I imagine it was atrocious relative to the Grand Am and the Oldsmobile, the Achieva, because I just don't think they knew what their market was going to be, and it was a standalone design. They can say whatever they want to here, but you look at that Park Avenue, Regal, the Roadmaster that was coming, and this stands alone, looking completely different than anything else. I don't know what GM was thinking. I don't know how this got through the approval process, and they end up with something that I understand why I liked it. I had a high opinion of Buick. I wanted another Buick. Here's a new Buick. It's smaller and in a price that I thought at the time I could afford. But in hindsight, comparing it with other things, no, absolutely not. Let me know your thoughts below, guys. I appreciate you being here.